COD fans, what's up? We've got tons of Rostermania news, so this one merits an overnight upload for you guys, as there's a lot more rumors and moves that are being circulated around the interwebs. The first big one is the Seattle Surge dropping their entire roster except for Octane. And this is an interesting position. I think a lot of people would have expected it if Seattle were going to make moves, it would have been something like this. The big thing following up is the fact that it's not just the entire roster, it's also Teddy Rex. We did not hear anything about Octane being released, so we're assuming that he's still in Seattle and probably going to stay there. And Joey Nubsy as well, the head coach, has not tweeted or posted anything that would lead us to assume that he has been dropped. So it looks like for Seattle, they are likely going to be building a roster around Joey Nubsy as the head coach and Octane as your main player. And how could you argue that? He actually led the league in overall kill-death ratio this year with a 1.3. The next closest was a 1.27. That was Skies. Just to give you some perspective, the next closest after that was a 1.2 from Wuskin. So even though it is just simple 10th place decimals, the difference is very large because the top from bottom, 1.3, the bottom was a 0.65 technically from Happy. We'll go ahead and say that it was a 0.8 from Exceed if you want to call it that. But still, the fact of the matter is 1.3 is extremely good. And Octane, I think if he was on any other team, he should have been consideration for MVP this year. The problem is you play for Seattle, it's hard to be valuable when your team has only won 4 games. So that's the difficult thing to be sure. But a 1.30 overall, that was actually a 1.3 in both hardpoint and nearly the same in domination, means that as a respawn AR, he is by far the most dominant AR in the game. That's insane. That's incredible. And it makes sense that you want to take that player and let him do whatever he wants to the roster to follow. And how about this? With everybody getting dropped off the Seattle roster, who could you potentially be looking at? Why not players like Gunless and Prestinni? Interesting cryptic tweet from Gunless today saying that he's never felt better. Prestinni with a little bit of a fist bump, and a lot of people are sitting there saying that, hey, these guys have apparently expressed interest in joining Octane in Seattle. That would be a very interesting mix, as you've got Octane as your main AR, Gunless, who usually runs more of a flex style role, and even though he didn't have the greatest or longest year when it came to playing with Chicago, before he got subbed out, he was actually holding right around a 1.0 KD across every single mode. He wasn't playing poorly, but vibes were a bit off. Prestinni, not quite as well. I mean, again, he played a much more aggressive role, and because of that, usually suffered a bit in the KD department, but what he did on the objective side of the map was pretty incredible. The thing that I think would probably make this not happen for the entire Seattle roster moving this direction with these three are the vibes. We've heard before that Octane doesn't want to play with Gunless. We've also got to keep in mind that Prestinni actually took Gunless's spot. Is there something there? But it looks like at the moment it very well could be Gunless and Prestinni looking for a home together, and then they may have already found themselves a position. I would not be surprised to see that be in Seattle. But what about the expectations for the rest of that Seattle Surge roster? For Enable, he was sitting on the bench for some time. I don't know if we're going to see him be picked up this year. I don't think he's all that high on a lot of people's lists. Of course, after the Black Ops 4 year, he played a very selfless role, and you thought that that was going to be noticed. He tried to do the same thing for Seattle, and obviously he gets put on the bench because of it. Well, not because of it, but he's not performing, so he gets put on the bench. Will Enable be able to return, do more 4v4 form? Questions to be considered. For Apathy, also a bit strange. I thought that out of all the players that were on Seattle to stick around with Octane, I thought Apathy would be that guy. You also got to keep in mind that Apathy is getting a little bit aged when it comes down to how long he's been playing the game. Might he consider retirement? Very possible, but for right now, I still think he's got a lot of stock in being a pro player at the CDL level, so hopefully he's shopping around for some options. The same can be said, I think, for Slack. Of course, I would say out of all the players that played on the Seattle Surge roster, he was the one to get the least amount of talking time. A, because he wasn't in addition to the roster from the Challenger scene like Proto or Pander. B, he didn't retire like Karma. And C, he just didn't really fill a role that made you talk about him, considering that it was just the Octane show all the way throughout the year. So will Slack be able to find a CDL spot? I think there's an argument to be made that he definitely deserves to be in there, but I just don't know if he's going to get those immediate offers. I would expect to find him on a roster kind of like Seattle from this last year, where it's kind of picking up some pieces and putting together a mediocre roster, but maybe not able to find results off just the initial names themselves when you see it down on paper. And then for Proto and Pander, I anticipate you'll likely see them in the Challenger scene next year. I don't think they were able to do too much spectacular to hold them in regard to be be sitting there and saying, hey, yeah, these guys need to be CDL pros going into the 4v4 years, so I expect that those guys will likely be back, most likely playing together in the Challenger scene this upcoming season. So a lot of moves going on overall, a lot of speculation. The only thing that we do know is that Octane is being at least looked at in some regard by the Seattle Surge, not signed yet, but likely going to be staying there. And then will Gunless and Prestinni join them? Could be the case. Everybody else, free agents officially confirmed by the Seattle Surge. Tomorrow we'll be taking a look at the Toronto Ultra and whatever else seems to be popping for us. So make sure you subscribe right here if you like high quality production. And of course, if you're looking for routine updates on Rostermania, you can find that all on the channel. So subscribe on your way out. And until the next one, hope you guys keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.